Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. Sorry for the delay. Technical difficulties. Spectrum sucks. Have to say that. We'll start with the pre-show. Obviously, we're not going to get Spectrum as an advertiser, Russ. You start with the pre-show. Go ahead.
I think most of us watch the Monday Night Football game. I don't want to say we all, because we used to all do it, and then we kind of hated it, but now there's nothing on, so we watch it again. And last night was an interesting comeback by the Baltimore Ravens. What I really didn't like about the broadcast, and Lamar Jackson's a stud, man. I wrote about him a few years ago. I really liked him. People, were like, oh, he's not really an MVP, and then he's the MVP. And you saw last night why he was an MVP, basically coming back from after getting fluids on fourth down, coming into a game cold, getting a first down, getting a touchdown, and then eventually another drive to set up a winning field goal. But again, ESPN had to harp on the point that when he went into the locker room, they thought he had, problems down there. And instead of basically having getting
number two problems.
Yeah, instead of having fluids. And so the issue is, after the game, I did see a picture where, because I think he was wearing long sleeves, where they showed he had gauze on his non-throwing arm where he probably did get fluids. And even this morning on one of ESPN shows, they kept that gag going. And it's like, he told you it wasn't like Paul Pierce. Why can't we just believe the athlete on this one?
When it comes to like a cheap gag like that, it seems like that's always the go-to, where it's just like, oh, hey, this is good for a wink and a nudge. And I don't know what the sideline reporter deal is there. I'm sure teams aren't going to be saying like, yep, our dude's got the runs. He's got he's got to get back there. So it's in that soft believability zone between teams not going to tell you what happened.
No.
And nobody's, even if it is, whether it's true or not, the team just saying like, no, he had cramps. We just had to get him electrolytes. That's the deal. You get to like, yeah, okay, whatever. He was on the toilet. We know. Okay, fine. Like, you're never going to get the real answer unless Lamar decides to go on Instagram Live and say, like, hey, no, here's what happened.
Yeah, I'm glad this game wasn't played in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
I found him to be pretty honest in post-game, maybe too honest. And he spelled it right out. He said no. And he even used Paul Pierce as an example. So I don't know. I believe him.
It makes me think of all the run Donovan McNabb got for yakking in a bucket.
Yeah.
During a couple of times during a game, and it's just like, I get it. Like that's the stuff that's more humanizing, I suppose, because everybody's not embarrassing moments.
Although he won't admit to it. McNabb, he says he never did it. We know, everybody in the world knows he did it, and he still holds with that. It's not like that guy Draws. Remember him? He would just vomit on the line anyhow. Like it didn't matter.
Well, what it brings back memories of, Russ, is when we were watching the Michael Jordan thing about the poisoned pizza, and then him.
Oh yeah.
I mean, do you really believe that story? No, I don't. I mean, I think it was something else. I don't know what exactly it was, but he admitted it wasn't the flu. It was food poisoning, and now I don't even know if it was food poisoning.
Yeah, I think the food poisoning is kind of weak. I'll tell you what I did enjoy, though. I did mind seeing ESPN putting up like the 5 worst losses in Cleveland history. And of course, Jordan was the number one, but they did show like 3 or 4 Browns ones, and that goes back to the to Bernie Kosar beating the Jets when they were up by 10 points with 3 minutes to go.
Well, Ernest Biner had to be one of them.
Well,
no, they didn't show Ernest Biner.
How isn't Game 7 of the World Series just a couple of years ago not up there?
They showed
Game 7 against the Marlins. How's that?
Right, I was going to say Edgar Renteria. I mean,
they showed the Marlins, they showed the Cubs, they showed a couple of the Browns things. But again, when they showed the Browns, I smiled because one time I ran into, it was the 01 draft, and we were out at the draft party, and we saw Bernie Kosar because he was a part owner of the team, and I told him the story about how I'm a Jets fan, and we chatted about it, and he was laughing about it. And so, again, sorry, Browns fans, I did did enjoy that.
Russ, I just before we start, I have to go down this road because that game yesterday was 2 of the quarterbacks in that big quarterback draft, Baker Mayfield versus Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen is blowing up with the Bills. And I still like Sam Darnold, and I think if Darnold can go someplace else and, have an offensive line in front of him that he could still have success. But your former coach and my former coach, Rex Ryan, goes on ESPN yesterday and says that Mark Sanchez is a better quarterback than Sam Darnold. Do you think he has a little bit of a stake in the game because Sanchez was his quarterback?
Well, there's no question Rex has had too much stake. We could start there. But the issue for me on that one is that Jets team had Alan Faneca on the line, who is going to be a Hall of Famer, and they had DeBrickashaw Ferguson, and they had Mangold at center, and that line was a world-class line. Now, Sanchez was a decent quarterback, but Sam Darnold's actually a better athlete than Sanchez is. Again, the Jets had so much of a better team, so much of a better offense. Right. It's not even fair for him to say that. And Sanchez is an ESPN guy. So shut up, Rex. Seriously.
The thing everybody, and I know it's very easy to pile on the Jets. Russ, you know how easy it is to pile on the Jets. You pile on the Jets. I get it. I'm a Lions guy. I get it's easy to pile on your own team. But I mean, the Jets, everybody forgets they went to 2 AFC title games.
I know.
During the Sanchez years.
They did.
Like, geez, those Jets, they're always really bad. I'm like, no, they were away from the Super Bowl. Like
they beat the Patriots in the playoffs. Right. They beat Tom Brady.
It's just
I remember that.
The whole woe is me stuff, and listen, I'm extremely guilty of that. But like when it comes to Jet stuff, it's just like, man, they had a run there for about 5 years where they were really, really good.
They did.
And that was under Rex. That's not even counting the Parcells years.
No, that's true, and it was fine. And yeah, it's just for whatever reason, we Jet fans, it always seems to be extra painful because it's just the way it is. But you're right. There's other teams that are worse off. But Darnold had bad coaching and bad teams, and he is going to go somewhere and do well. He's going to sit for a year, though. I'm telling you, Pete Carroll already set it up. I could see them replacing Geno Smith with Sam Darnold because, again, Geno Smith coming in the other day was a nice surprise. And I could see it happening. I can. And then he'll go somewhere else after that.
Well, Rex Ryan has been, quote, dining out on him beating Belichick for years. And, because part of the whole thing was him saying that Trevor Lawrence is going to be, basically the savior of the Jets. Well, anybody who knows Rex Ryan, his son played at Clemson and played. I think he was a senior when Trevor Lawrence was a freshman.
Yeah,
and Rex is biased when it comes to Clemson, and I think he's a
hardest fan. So let's move on.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, December 15th, 2020.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com, and we are pleased to be joined by a fellow Buffalonian, Joe Yerdon. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Mike. Russ, good to see you guys again.
Yep, same here.
Okay, let's start with what we're waiting for this week, which is some announcement from the NHL regarding the return to play.
Any announcement,
yes, anything, please.
An agreement, please.
I've heard some indications that it's going to happen on Thursday. I think it was Kevin McGran and the Toronto Star reported that there's going to be an announcement later in the week. But Chris Johnston on Sportsnet and Hockey Central this morning was talking about what we should expect when it comes to the start of the season, which is slated to be January 13th. And one of the things, and I hate this, but I mean, if this is what they have to do, this is what they have to do. Teams and players want to play in their buildings for obvious reasons, but the sense that Chris is getting is that the season may start in regional hubs. I'm assuming that means one or two for each division. And like I said, I hate that, Joe, but I mean, if that's the reality with COVID blowing up right now, then that's the reality.
Yeah, it's every bit of sports, and it's not just hockey, but every bit of sports has been about trying to buy time until there's a vaccine. And now that the vaccine is actually out there and it's coming and people are going to start getting it, and apparently athletes are going to be the first ones in line to get it. Let's not even get started down that road. But it's all been an effort to try to just buy time to get it out there, to get it so that they can have no issues about playing games, and then eventually start getting fans in the building, which this is exactly what this seems to be. If you can play the first month or two in a hub, play like half your schedule, then play the second half, and then the playoffs maybe with fans in buildings, get some kind of home ice thing happening, get some money in the owner's pockets and the players' pockets, then everybody goes home happy and then everything's fine. But it's still going to be a while before enough people have a vaccine to be able to have full buildings and to be able to do things that way. And I don't think we want to go down. I don't think we want to go down the road where you have to like show a card and proof that you've gotten your vaccine to be able to go to a game. I don't think anybody wants to do that.
No, I think the issue here though is I don't think we're getting in the regular season for most cities with fans. I just don't. Now there'll be Florida, there'll be outliers, no question. But I don't think you're going to get it as a whole. If you could get it started for the playoffs, I think everybody would sign on for that. And so if you're expanding that, fine. I'll live with it. Even with the crazy divisions, we'll live with it because we do want to see hockey and we get it. I hate that they're dragging this whole thing out because they've had months to do this. And now it is just dragging.
Well, prepare for more dragging because one of the things that Chris said was the NHL, like they did with the return to play before the qualifying round, they may wait to the absolute last minute to release the schedule. He said it could be as late as early January, which means basically 10 days before the regular season. And I'm assuming that means because they don't know whether it's going to be in hubs or in individual buildings. If it's individual buildings, then the schedule will probably be different than it would be if they're playing in hubs.
All right. I mean, again, I could live with that. At this point, I just want to see signs of life. And we really haven't seen signs of life this year. We haven't seen any quotes from anybody. We haven't heard anything coming out of these meetings. We know they're happening, but, you just like to get these little nudges along here to kind of, let us know that there's, proof of life and all. But Joe, my question for you is, do you think a team like the Sabres who've literally been on ice for 8 months are going to get at least a couple of day jump on this or no?
I would hope that the teams that were not part of the return to play protocol, I guess, back in summer would get at least a little extra time. I mean, if not officially, then unofficially, just get it. Tell the guys, be like, hey, listen, if you guys start skating together, we've got this date circled. If you guys want to get together like another week in advance of that, we're not going to say no. We're going to look the other way. Like, NHL is good about that kind of clandestine stuff. That teams always do captains practices before camp starts up, anyways. But I think if they tell teams like, hey, listen, if Jersey and Buffalo and Detroit and all these teams, they want to get together a week and a half in advance, like officially, unofficially, then that's fine.
Yeah, from what I heard, at the most they're going to get like 2 or 3 days extra, and it's like, they haven't played in 8 months, and instead of giving them a week, they're giving them 2 or 3 days. I mean, give me a break. These teams are really screwed, but I think what the NHL is basically thinking is, we've got to get things started, and we really can't, give them the week. But I think it's unfair to those teams.
It is a little unfair.
Now, one thing, and Chris didn't say this, but I'm drawing the conclusion from other things that were said on the broadcast. There are areas like Florida, like Texas, like Arizona that would allow fans. And if you do have hubs, they may give those hubs to cities that fans are allowed, because any additional amount of revenue is less money. That's more money that they're going to make if it's an empty building. So why not do it? That's probably the thought process.
I'm sure that's the thought process. I don't think they're going to do hubs, though. I don't. I think they're going to travel the same way MLB did, but right. I think they are going to allow gate where gate's allowed. And this way teams can pick up a few shekels here and there, because you do get money when you're on the road too. And so, I think they'll end up doing that. I don't see how they could really stop that, especially if those owners say, hey, look, my football counterparts are putting people in the stadium. We want to do the same thing, Gary. I mean, I don't think he's going to stop them this time.
Yeah, I hope you're right, but of course, every time I think, they're going to play in their buildings, I keep hearing somebody who's got more context than I do saying, well, it's going to start in hubs. It's like,
I mean, the only one who can't play in their own building is San Jose so far.
Right, and from what I understand, the ban on playing in Santa Clara County would expire before the beginning of the regular season. So unless they extend it.
Right, so camp has to be somewhere else.
Right. Now, the other thing that he mentioned was something we've talked about before, and something that I hope the NHL implements. Joe, I think 24 teams was too much, but obviously that was because the season ended with 10 to 12 games remaining. But they're talking about expanded playoff formats, and since they're going to play intra-division, what would make sense is probably like 4 versus 5 playing in a best-of-3 series. So make it 20 teams instead of 16. I'm all for that, and honestly, when it gets to 32 teams with Seattle, I want 20 teams in the playoffs. I think 16 is too little, but Bettman and other people are pushing against that. What do you think?
I think when you get to 32, I mean, having 50% of the league make the playoffs, I think that's fine. Only because the NHL's always been kind of the joke league. Looking, back in the days when it was, the Patrick division, Adams division, all that stuff, where 4 out of 5 teams in a division were making the playoffs, and it was just like, okay, well, who cares? Just don't be the worst. And I think in this case, having it be down the middle, I think that's totally fine. You're getting the best of the best at that point, provided, of course, that they get it correct and stop doing this insane crossover wild card nonsense. Just take your top 8 regardless, and just split your games more evenly within the conference and make it work that way. But I think if you wanted to add a little bit more intrigue, and that seems to be copying baseball again, where if you wanted to do 8 versus 9, best of 3 play-in to see who plays number 1,
right?
I'm okay with that. I think that's a fine way to do it. But I think if you get beyond, you start taking the top 10, top 11, top 12, I think that gets a little bit dicey at that point.
Yeah, I mean, somebody in the chat, and we mentioned this yesterday, it was ridiculous when it was 16 teams making it out of 21. I'm not saying that 80% of the league should make the playoffs, but and technically, like last year, it wasn't 24 teams that made the playoffs. The 8 teams that lost in a qualifying round, so technically they didn't make the playoffs. So it would be 16. It's just a mechanism to earn additional revenue. So
yeah, to me, that's just putting pig in a lipstick at that point.
Sure.
If you did that again this year, I mean, look at how. I know it's awkward to say because Chicago advanced and. Bad teams were able to jump up, but I think when you're opening that door and you're making things a little bit more sketchy at that point, what's the point of having why are you having an 82 game regular season?
Right.
At that point, there's no point in beating your heads in if you're just going to let the door open so that some team that should be a lottery team, a deep lottery team, squeeze their way into the playoffs just because somebody else has just already decided to cash out. That's foolish to me.
So I do have breaking news.
Go ahead.
So this comes out of Kitchener. So this is going to be a little bit of fun. Arrests made after over $500,000 in Wayne Gretzky memorabilia stolen from his dad's home in Brantford.
I was going to bring this up because in the wake of Gretzky's rookie card, the O-Pee-Chee rookie card, drawing $1.4 million. I'm sure some geniuses in Brantford decided to break into his house to see if they could steal memorabilia. I mean, thank God.
Well, this is a 3-month-long thing, so it started. Okay. So I don't think it was that, Mike, but again, it started in August when the call was made saying these things were missing.
Okay.
And they did arrest a 58-year-old Oakville man and with theft of over $5,000 and possession over $5,000 and a woman too. So now the other interesting part of this is that Matt Barnaby a few minutes ago put, if what I'm hearing is true, one of the people involved in the Gretzky stolen memorabilia has been at many NHL functions over the years. Disgusting. So this is an interesting story. We're probably going to hear more about it. I've been to Brantford many times. I have a friend that lives there, so I actually have to drive down Wayne Gretzky Parkway to get to him.
Yes,
which I think is awesome. I'm sorry, Mike probably hates it because Mike.
Yeah, no. There's a big picture of Doug Gilmour with his chin bleeding.
Oh, see, I mean, it just never stops. But I did find that this story was interesting because, yeah, you're right. If this would have lined up with the rookie card thing, then we really would have had something. But
yeah,
it didn't align with that.
Yeah. Where was O.J. Simpson seen anywhere involved in this?
I don't think O.J.'s ever been to Oakville.
No. He has been. He was looking for the real killer.
Maybe he rented a car. Maybe.
Okay. He was a white Bronco.
I always want to remind people. Maybe Joe doesn't know this. When my brother graduated at UB, we went out to dinner at the Cloisters, and on the backs of chairs, they used to have names of celebrities that sat there. I sat in the OJ chair.
Well, I told you the OJ story.
You've been jinxed ever since, Russ. I have to ask.
No, things have gone good for me. Not as good for OJ though.
Hey, no. I will just I'll briefly retell this story. There was a place on Transit Road, with Joe would know where Transit Road is. It's near the Buffalo Airport, called the American Bar and Grill. I don't think it's no longer in existence, but it was a sports bar in the late 80s and the early 90s when having a wall full of TVs was a big thing.
Yeah.
The NBC came to town for the first Bills AFC Championship game against the Raiders. So we went, me and a bunch of friends went to this place, and Costas and I think Pete Axtelm and OJ was part of the crew. So I go up to the bar because it was my turn to buy a round, and I buy a thing of beers, and I'm standing next to this really attractive, tall blonde. And I just said hello. And I wasn't trying to pick her up because she was like way out of my league. I just said hello, and she said hello back, and she was real nice for a few minutes. And I started to walk away, and OJ comes over, grabs her by the arm, and pulls her away. It was Nicole Brown Simpson. And I'm like, and of course it was not part of my mind until everything happened 5 years later. And then I'm like, oh my God, that was the girl that I saw at the bar.
Did you check out OJ's shoes by any chance?
Yeah, I like those Bruno Malleys. All right, let's talk some World Junior. The 3 teams from Europe apparently got to Edmonton safely, which I still am a little puzzled at.
Let Joe know, Joe, yesterday we put a little I put a link up on Twitter with Billy Joel's Vienna, and Mike played that yesterday as a lead-in for the story. We thought it would be a nice touch.
Yeah, but Joe, I don't know if whoever wins this tournament is going to receive an asterisk, like people are saying is going to happen with any team that wins the Super Bowl. But with players, key players missing from Team Sweden and their coaching staff shorthanded, and a couple players like Nick Robertson being held back, and Beecher for Team USA. I mean, I'm not saying Canada's got a cakewalk, because I think there are other good teams in this tournament, but I do think that there are teams that have been hurt by COVID and hurt by their NHL counterparts holding back players.
Yeah, it's Sweden's the biggest one to me that sticks out, just because of all the illness issues that they've got with the coaching and the players, which just brings me back to March and April, when everybody said we got to be like Sweden, we got to do things like that, and I was like, I don't know if that's the way to do it. And but I mean, as far as team stuff, of all the stuff that's going on, I almost want to say there's less of an asterisk for this, because Canada should run away with this. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But Canada's the most helped, because the NHL's not going on, so they're getting more guys that they probably wouldn't have. I mean, I would argue that their top line, they probably wouldn't have any of those guys involved if it wasn't the NHL was playing. So, but I mean, as long as everybody gets up to Canada and everything's locked down the way it should be, and they're in the World Junior bubble, this is about as close to as any tournament you'd see in the past with everything. I mean, the U.S. probably not as hyped as they have been in the past. I mean, Spencer Knight's going to be great, but I mean, Canada just looks just monstrous, and Finland's probably going to be pretty good. Russia's probably going to be fine. Sweden having their issues is certainly a problem, but is it enough for an asterisk? I don't think so.
I don't know. I might put one, because again, Bordeleau would have made the U.S. team. That's another one. I think Master Simone might have made it, and Vlasic would have made it. Like he would have probably been there instead of Skinner. So that's quite a lot of guys that the U.S. are missing. And look, everybody's had the same chance on missing players. I get it, but Canada has had a little bit of an edge with this. So I might put an asterisk. Based on
the thing that gets me though is why were the United States having guys be roommates?
Well, that's what we're assuming, right? Well, here's how the call went, Joe. It was very weird, because I was on that call, and at first Van Beesbroek didn't really even want to say that there was a positive test. But when he got pushed, he said, yeah, there was a positive test, and it was he wouldn't say it was, and he said, yeah, unfortunately, both guys had to go home. And so, yeah, we were all sort of discussing this, and Kevin Allen was on the next day on our Off the Post show, and we discussed it again. And he goes, yeah, normally NHLers are traveling single, and right now in this bubble, players will be single. But it didn't seem like that was the case for that, because how else would one other player get exposed with this player when everybody else had the same chance?
Mm-hmm.
So
if he wasn't a locker mate or something, then
right.
How does that go down?
Right. So they were very vague about it, to say the least, on the call, and we never got much clarity. So we're all just having to sort of guess there. I do think Canada is the leader. There's no surprise there.
Yeah.
After talking to Larry Anoff and then seeing the U.S. roster, I do kind of think Russia is the second best right now. The other funny thing, Joe, and you would like this because just following college hockey, and I know you do too. Once they said there were 9 defensemen, I basically put up on Twitter exactly why that happened, even though we knew that there was something that went on. But this is Nate Lehman. It's not like he's all of a sudden this new coach. Like, he was with Union, he was with Providence. And so I basically said he's just trying to build bodies in front of Spencer Knight. That's what he's trying to do. And literally that day, a couple hours later, he said, yeah, we're building this team from the net out. Yeah. And so he probably would have done that anyhow. I don't know if he'd have gone 9, but he was going to do that regardless. And the problem with that is the U.S. is relying heavily on Cole Caulfield and also on Arthur Kaliev to be their main goal scorers. And while these guys are great goal scorers, we've seen in these tournaments, guys can go on dry spells, especially on the power play. That hurt the U.S. last year. So that's the worry. Like, guys like Zegras and all those, yes, everybody's capable of scoring, but they have more playmakers than scorers on this team. And that's my worry. My other worry is I believe they're going to go with Sanderson probably on the top power play first, but I think York's an actual better power play guy. Will they put together? I don't know, but I don't think they will, because I don't think Lehman likes to operate that way either. And I have a feeling like York will be on the second power play, and we're going to have to muddle through a few games. And if Sanderson's hot, great. But that's, Sanderson can do it. It's not like he can't. So I don't want Sabres fans to think he can't. Yeah. It's just that this is more in York's wheelhouse than Sanderson's. That's just my take on that.
The thing that I know about Lehman is that he needs a puck mover. Like, that's his teams at Union. He had Gostisbehere, and then at Providence he had Bryson. So if he's got somebody who can move the puck and move it effectively and smart, that's going to be his lean on guy for power play stuff and for driving the offense. And I wonder, to me, Cam York's more of that guy.
Yeah.
As compared to Sanderson. But that's where, and I know a lot of Buffalo people were wondering, how Ryan Johnson fits into this team. Well, Johnson started off very good this season for Minnesota. And I wonder if maybe that's going to give him an opportunity to get some of those minutes, because he's such a good skater and he's such a fast skater.
And he's very smart. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a guy that, I was very borderline on whether he was actually going to make this team or not. But now that he's on there, I wonder if maybe he falls into that position.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible. The other big thing is they have some continuity with like Jackson Lacombe. They have a Minnesota connection of 3 of their defensemen, and I like that, because that's something where if you have to pair some of these guys together, you can. They also have a couple of Providence guys. I just put up an article about Brett Berard, because I know everybody is sort of painting him, well, yeah, he's Marchand or he's Gallagher, and that's why he's on this team. And it's like, that's not really exactly why he's on this team. Now, it doesn't hurt to have your head coach coaching the U.S. team, that's for sure, but you still have to play. But he and Moynihan are teammates, and having that coach, those kinds of things are good if they're good players. And they are good players. And Berard's actually got more skill than I think people realize, because he, even though he's 5'9", I've seen him put it on display where, hey, you know what? He could get you an important goal here or there. But he also does get under the skin of players. That's just his natural gift.
It's just a bonus.
Yeah.
Well, that coach connection thing reminds me of what's going on with Canada, where Jack Quinn has suddenly become a guy who's factoring very heavily into the top part of their forward group. And I just think, probably helps to have your coach, your Ottawa coach, be the guy running the show there. And that, to me, everybody here is just kind of like, well, because now everybody in Buffalo wants to make, turn everything into the nobody believed in Josh Allen train. They want to be like, no, nobody believed in Jack Quinn, and now here he is.
All right, so let's start with Josh Allen. I wrote good things about Allen. Matter of fact, Mike will back me up on this. I thought Allen was really good coming out of the draft. I did. And I only thought he needed to improve his passing. Well, he has improved his passing, and he's a really good quarterback. Jack Quinn is really good. Now, Jack Quinn definitely had like this big, huge breakout season. And yeah, is he getting a little too much push? Maybe. The only thing I'll say about the Ottawa thing is Graham Clark didn't make it, and that's an Ottawa guy, and he was on the roster. And he's a good player, but clearly, outclassed when it comes to these other ones. So he didn't put him on the roster.
Well, Russ, just because you're saying that, the U.S. are going to play as if they're building from the net out, that sounds to me like a recipe like Finland or like the Swiss when they play internationally. They're going to play defense first and counterattack. And I'm like, with the talent that the U.S. has, I don't know if that style is conducive. I mean, I understand that Canada is much more talented, but relegating yourself to that type of style, I think doesn't really do them any good.
Well, but guys like it's funny, but guys like Kaliev and Zegras, especially Kaliev, he's a bigger guy, so he could play a physical game too. Berard's another one that could cycle. Moynihan's another one that can play that game. He's got a lot of these college players that can play that. Hey, we're going to play it close to the vest kind of cycle game and grind it out a bit. Even though they're high-end players on the team, right, they do have these guys, and I do think they are going to rely on them to a certain degree. I do. But as far as the Russian team, look, they've Askarov in net. That's massive. They have Podkolzin. They've got Amarov. They, it's funny. Abramov is one of these guys that could be an X factor, but nobody's seen enough of him to be able to give a great report on him to know how he's going to do in this. But the biggest thing, when I talked to Larionov the other day, the biggest thing he said, and this really did stick with me, is even though their defense, there's a lot of no-name guys on the defense other than Shaq, as we like to call him, and it's just easier, Joe.
Yeah, I understand.
It's just easier. But what's interesting is a lot of those guys have been playing in the KHL. So you have to think they're going to come bursting out of the gate better than some other teams, because some of these guys have played, 10, 12, 15, 20 games, depending on the team. So that's a plus.
Yeah. I think it's going to be I think it's definitely going to be a plus, because although the thing that's sort of negative, and you can transfer this to the NHL too, players that have been playing in Europe, playing in the KHL, playing in the Swiss league or the Swedish league, they have to quarantine. Some of the players in going into Edmonton have to sit for 4, 5, 6 days before they can get on the ice. So any advantage that they have of playing multiple games over the last couple months, not that they're going to fall out of shape in a week, but that advantage may, sort of go by the wayside.
Yeah. They're asking in the chat room, Pittsburgh's Kelly Klang, he is a really good goalie. It wouldn't shock me if he is the number one goalie. Anthony wrote McMichael equals McDavid plus Eichel. No, but Connor McMichael's a hell of a player. He really is. He'll have a really good tournament. There's no question about it. Philip Tomasino might be one of the better guys on the team, too, because he's been arcing up for a while now. Dylan Cousins will certainly do something because he's got a great shot.
That's what I wanted to ask Joe about, because Sabre fans are excited because Quinn and Cousins make Team Canada. And, we heard before the season that, Cousins had a chance to make the Sabres. Now, the question is, the WHL is shut down. We don't know when they say the OHL is going to start in February. I'll believe it when I see it. Mm-hmm. What are NHL teams going to do with prospects that if their junior teams are not active, are they going to keep them on taxi squads? Are they going to have them practice with the team? What do you think is going to happen with these kids?
To me, that's a no-brainer question. You keep them. You keep them. You have them practice with your big club. If they're not playing games, that's fine. But if they're able to practice with their team every day and get into those reps and get those good habits and be around the people that they're going to be around for the next few seasons,
right?
Keep them. If their leagues aren't going to play, if they're going to be workout freaks and be at home and be on the ice at home every day, that's fine. And I know these guys have all done that. Apparently Cousins has put on almost 20 pounds. From when he was drafted to when he's checked in at Canada camp. But to me, if you can have Cousins around Jack Eichel and Eric Stahl and Jeff Skinner and those guys, let them play with them. Anybody who's borderline, just keep them with their NHL teams. If you don't know, and that even goes for OHL guys like Nick Robinson. Let him stay with the Leafs camp the whole time. It doesn't matter. Just keep.
I wish they'd come out with a rule, Joe, where they say, "Hey, we'll give you like 25 games instead of 10 with these guys based on the kind of year it is." That would solve that problem, because even like the Q's not starting up until the middle of January. Mm-hmm. So it's like, that's as an example.
But I think that's one where the PA can really do them a favor.
Yes.
The PA and the owners can do a favor by expanding the roster to 26. If they want to go 26, 30, like whatever. And then have a taxi squad, like that's great. I know the AHL still says they're gonna do things. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, I'm shaky on the AHL. Are you too?
Yeah, just because they need tickets, they need seats, they need.
Right.
You can't just operate with empty barns, because
they're going to get money from the NHL. Like the NHL always gives the AHL money, and they're certainly going to give more this year. But is that going to be enough to tide them over? That's the question.
Right. Like, are NHL teams going to give their AHL teams that have guys on AHL only contracts money to pay them? I don't know about that. Like I mean, then you're paying for two teams, and that's right. That's a lot.
Well, I mean, there's a whole bunch of considerations when it comes to the parameters and of the current CBA and what's going to happen with these players. Like, for example, a young player like Robertson, if he plays 40 games in a normal season, then or if he plays 10 games, his ELC kicks in. If he plays 40 games, then that's a year towards being an unrestricted free agent. But you're only playing a 56-game season. All those markers are based on 82. So how do they adjust those accordingly? Is it a percentage of what? I mean, we don't know. That's something that I'm sure the PA and the NHL are hashing out. Will these players on the taxi squad count against the salary cap? If that's the case, then teams like Toronto and Tampa Bay can't have a taxi squad because they're up against the cap.
Yeah.
So what about waivers? Will these players have to go through waivers every time they're called up, or will there be an exception for COVID? I mean, these are the things that we don't know, and these are factors because they'll have impact on players being made available for the expansion draft and all these other things, because there's games played implications with that. So we don't know what that is, but we're gonna find all that out when the NHL releases their plan in hopefully the next few days.
Now we know why the meetings are taking all week.
Yeah,
right.
But as far as the minor, the 9-10 game contract thing, from what I remember of 2012, 2013, from that lockout, was that players in that position they were allowed to play 4 games before they had to decide, and then if it was the 5th game, then the contract kicked in. I only remember this because of what happened with Grigorenko in Buffalo, and he went from playing 15 minutes, 10 minutes to 8 minutes, and then they decided to still keep him around and then kept him around too long before deciding they were going to send him back to Quebec. But by that point, the contract was already been activated. So that was that was Lindy Ruff in charge then. So
I can see a lot of these guys getting that. Another player I want to highlight is Matt Beniers. I got to see him about 3 times last year, 2 with the U.S. team and 1 at the All-American Prospects game. Thought a lot of him, put a few check marks. Now that we see him after a long summer of training, which, again, not really summer, but, off season of training, it really helped a lot of players, and he's one of them. And I have to tell you, he gives me an Austin Matthews vibe in the sense that bursting onto the scene, similarly to Matthews, everybody talking about him. He looking great in scrimmages, looking great in the regular season for Michigan. He is coming in hot and at the right time. I go back to Matthews where I saw him playing for the U.S. team. I went to, like, they had their first batch of games at the whatever they're calling the rink in Eisenhower Park on the island. So I went to see him because I wanted to see how that was, being in my old area. But I also wanted to see a few players from the U.S. team. And honestly, that day I was there to see guys like Casey Fitzgerald and maybe Milano was on that team, a few guys. And I kept seeing this other guy bursting down the ice, getting almost breakaways, but couldn't really put the puck in the net. And it was a young Austin Matthews. The next year, he was phenomenal. And then, of course, you find out his story, and he had a broken leg and recovered. And so you realize why maybe he didn't burst on the scene as quick. Beniers, he's a center. He's got great wheels. I don't think they were as good as Matthews were then, but it's close. but he may have a better shot as far as from far away than Matthews. He won't be the beast that Matthews is in the crease, but that's somebody where he is still somehow under the radar going into this tournament, and he could be a big plus for the U.S.
In player news, I saw not that this guy's a superstar, because he's not, but he's been in the NHL for 6 seasons. Melker Karlsson's been a pretty good soldier, bottom 6 guy for San Jose. Well, he signed in the SHL for the rest of the season. I presumably because he didn't get enough interest in the NHL. Which, Joe, that brings me to, and we've gone over this a couple times, but now I think in the next few days, if the return to play parameters come to fruition, these players that are unsigned right now, especially the UFAs, I mean, the feeling I get is guys like Hoffman, I'm sure their agents have been talking to teams, but I almost get the feeling that the UFA guys, Hoffman, Vatanen, Hamonic, they're all going to take 1-year deals, because I can't see teams spending big long-term money. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think the long-term boat sailed for those guys already. I mean, I think honestly, once Taylor Hall signs a 1-year deal, I think those other guys are just kind of screwed.
Yeah.
Even though I know those other guys were probably waiting for Hall to sign to decide what they were going to do.
Right.
In Hoffman's case, like he's in a weird place because he is on that older side. He's 29, 28, 29.
Right.
And teams are starting to come around to the more statistical way of thinking of like 30 is the hard line where unless you're an exceptional guy who's like a workout freak and just does everything the right way,
right,
the numbers are dropping off once you hit about 29, 30. So now Hoffman's in a bad spot where this is his time to cash in, and now it's just kind of like, all right, well, I just basically lost a year because COVID stinks, and now he's in a spot where it's like he's got to do a prove-it contract. And I think for him and everybody in that same position where it's like they thought they were going to be able to at least maybe even get a short-term cash in, kind of screwed, because now they got to do eat it on a 1-year minimum, like not minimum wage, but like a 1-year, $1, $2, $3 million contract.
Right.
That's where they're stuck, and that's what they got to deal with, and that means they've got to go out and just come out all guns blazing and see what they can do. But like we said, it's tough. It's tougher to do when you're a little bit older and the league just keeps getting younger.
Yeah, and that 1-year contract, you're only getting 72% of whatever you get in terms of the salary. So it's not even a $3 million contract. It's a $2.2 million contract or something like that. But I mean, it's not just Hoffman. I mean, I'm going down the list here. Hoffman, Michael Granlund, Hamonic, Eric Halla, Soderberg, Anthony Duclair. I mean, there are a lot of players out there, Russ, and these guys are really going to be stuck.
I mean, honestly, the only guys that I felt like were going to get multi-year deals in a bad economy, we'll call it, were Vatanen and Hoffman, and now I don't feel like they're even going to get it. And to be honest, look, Vatanen's vastly overrated for what he probably could have been.
Right.
And he probably needs to prove it more than Hoffman. Hoffman is a legit goal scorer.
Right.
And no matter what you do, he's a legit goal scorer. He has proved it, but like Joe said, it's just he's a victim of circumstance. Vatanen hasn't really proved it, whether he's been durable enough or scoring enough points, but he wasn't good in New Jersey. He was just average. Now, was it because they were just average? Maybe, but he does need to prove it. And I don't even think he could really call his own shot anymore.
Yeah.
And I know everybody wants to say, well, Ottawa can sign him, or, just look for any team with cap space. But these teams don't want to spend any more money. I don't even think the Columbus Blue Jackets want to spend any more money. I keep saying that. Everybody has players, going there, and I don't think they're going to spend any more. I think what team they have is the team they're going to roll with.
Right. The only teams that are going to spend money are the ones that have the cap space, and some of these players want to go to teams that have a chance of being successful, and the only way they can go to those teams is by taking less money. So it's sort of a catch-22.
Yeah, I mean, as an example, you can't go to Tampa. Nobody can because their situation is not right. Detroit's pretty much said they don't want anybody on short-term deals, so none of those guys can go to Detroit. Like their options are going to be really limited. And to me, the craziest one out there is Zdeno Chara, always has been. I have to say, I just laughed at at Jimmy Murphy saying, going to the Rangers with a question mark. I was going to put a snarky reply back and I didn't, but I laughed. I almost did a spit take on that one because I could never, ever, ever see that one happening ever.
Joe, until I see him out of, gold and black, I'm not going to believe it. I'm going to believe he's either retiring or he's going back to the Bruins. I can't imagine him going anywhere else.
Yeah, it'd be very hard for me to believe that at this point in his career at 43 that he wants to go and wrap it up somewhere else, unless it's a place like Ottawa where he's just like, okay, let's tie a bow on things. It won't be the Island. I mean, no, it'd be really funny if it was the Island, but
it would be
there. But Russ, you mentioned Columbus like having tons of cap space. They're still waiting to get Dubois done. Like that's the reason why they're not spending any.
That's true.
So
the situation there with Dubois, with the Islanders and Barzal, with Cirelli in Tampa. I mean, Tampa's $2 million over the cap, and unless they're putting Stamkos on LTIR, and by the way, Russ, I saw an article, I think it was from Joe Smith, that said, well, they don't know where Stamkos is right now. So it's
of course they don't.
Laying the groundwork for the LTIR. But, I seriously doubt he's going to be on long-term injury for the entire season. So Brisebois is going to have to deal with that. So is Lou with Barzal. I mean, these are situations that are going to have to be wrapped up in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, the late, great Pierre Lacroix probably didn't know what Peter Forsberg was doing either until like 2 days before the end of the season. He said, hey, I'm good for the playoffs. If you want to activate me now, I'm fine.
Lou got a gift with Boychuk retiring. That helped out a lot.
Gift. Yeah. Robida Island gift.
Yeah, but Joe, let's ask you about Barzal because we've given our opinion on the show. Even with the extra cap space, I don't think it looks good for them signing him long term at this point. I think they're going to end up, just pushing it in on a bridge deal, and then you have to hope down the line he re-signs with the team or becomes a free agent and they could outbid everybody.
Yeah, the one thing I've learned over all this time of following and writing about hockey is that I don't ever doubt what Lou can pull off. And I know the Toronto aspect of that is a little different, but but I just think of Lou in his natural habitat where he has full control. He doesn't have voices whispering in his ear on the island. That's not the case. This is Lou in his New Jersey glory.
Yeah.
Lou knows how to pull the strings. Lou knows how to get stuff figured out. Lou knows how to knuckle down when he needs to. And I think in Barzal's case, he's in a bad spot where if him and his agent trying to work with Lou, where he doesn't have Shanahan, in his ear. He doesn't have all these guys in Toronto in his ear telling him what to do. He's got full run of the roost, and that for me, as far as Barzal's concerned, I hate every bit of negotiating with ironclad Lou because that means you're not going to get what you want or what you think you deserve. And Lou's going to get his way. Now, the only way Barzal can top that is to say, like, okay, Lou, we'll do a bridge deal, fine, and then go out and win Art Ross, win an MVP, and then say, all right, now you got to pay me, or you're trading me somewhere.
Right, it could happen. I think the worry is if they sign him to a bridge deal, because even with the Islanders getting a new place, there's still no guarantee they're going to want to pay him like a top 10 guy in the league. Right. But I think we all know that if Barzal is outside of Trotz's system, he could be a top 10, 15 guy in the league offensively.
With Barzal, shorter is better. If in the negotiations right now, if say he says, okay, I'll take a 2-year deal, then he's 2 years away from being an unrestricted free agent. And if he does put up big numbers and Lou still doesn't want to pay him, then he basically just goes 1 year, and he says, see you later. So he does a Tavares. I mean, that's the thing they have to worry about, Joe, is the fact that if they don't pay him now, they're either going to pay him much more later or they're not going to be in a position to pay him at all because he's going to be someplace else.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's a road that Islanders fans don't want to walk down again. But they haven't. I mean, I guess they have now that Tavares, went to Toronto. They've kind of put all their hopes and dreams on Barzal being the guy that's going to carry them forward. And rightfully so.
They have to have somebody to market with the new arena. And I mean, Sorokin's great, but you can't really market Sorokin to a new arena. A lot of people on Long Island are not going to know who Ilya Sorokin is, even if he has a good year this year.
Yeah, you're looking at if Barzal goes, then you're talking about building around Sorokin, who we don't know what he's going to be yet.
Right.
Or, Anders Lee, who's getting older. And then
Yeah, you're building around Noah Dobson.
Yeah, Noah Dobson. Like, you getting excited about a defenseman that, like, okay, like, Dobson was great, but like,
yeah, let's think about that. And Dobson's really good, but yeah, he's not like charismatic. Right. Let's just say, Channel 5, Channel 11 News there want to interview guys for the hockey season starting, and the Rangers have Lafreniere, and then the Islanders say, well, talk to, Brock Nelson.
Yeah.
Like, it's not very exciting.
Talk to Matt Martin. He's on a new contract.
Right. I mean, it's just, there has to be a certain amount of flash on the island. You do have to still – that arena is not going to fill up itself for 2 or 3 years running the same way Barclays did now. Will it be better and better sightlines? Sure. But that place is still going to have some issues like any other Long Island arena will. So you're going to have to really want to make people go there. And, yeah, you almost have to sign Barzal only because there's nobody else in their system that's even close to him skill-wise, speed-wise, which what this league is.
Well, Russ, maybe they can use the Nassau Coliseum as a parking lot for the nearest Honda dealership because they did that at the other place.
No. They're still going to have concerts. They should have an ECHL team or an AHL team there. I mean, I hear that Bridgeport rink is great, but you know what? Switch the Islanders franchise to at least to the Coliseum and get somebody else for Bridgeport. That would be a smart move.
Yeah, the Bridgeport rink is great. The Bridgeport area is the exact opposite of that.
Right. And people would go to Nassau Coliseum for AHL games. They would.
Now, Russ, we both saw the tweets that were coming out of Sweden this morning.
Oh, yeah.
Now, in reading a little bit of it, I didn't read the whole story, but it wasn't in the SHL. It was in the second tier. It was
the Alpha-Spin, yeah.
Right. So basically, it sounds like the line on this particular game was the odds were at a certain point when, and these were live. This was a live line. The one team was up 3-1, and the line flopped to the other team, and then that team ended up winning, scoring 7 consecutive goals and winning 8-4.
7 unanswered goals. When's the last time you've seen that, Joe?
I think it was a Division III game. So
yeah.
I think it was Oswego Fredonia. So because Oswego won like 11-1.
I think I saw Tim Donaghy retweeted that story yesterday.
The last time I saw that was a Toronto Marlies Belleville Senators game at the Air Canada Center, then named the Air Canada Center, where Belleville scored 7 straight in the third period. It was an Antoine Bibeau, so that is an exception to the rule.
Yeah, Funky's asking, is Wallstrom improve his skating? He has, and he's playing in Europe, and he's doing pretty good. So I think that's a plus for him. It was also his defensive liabilities. There was somebody who pointed that out to me after the draft, and I really looked at it, and he was right. And so that's another thing with Wallstrom. But as far as this story, I mean, we're in the gambling era, and now these kinds of things do have to be looked at a lot more closely.
And one of the things that the NHL that they're talking about in terms of revenue enhancement is, I know in Canada you could only bet hockey games when it was like 2 or 3 games, like some sort of parlay or whatever. Now they're going to be allowing on like ProLine individual game betting, and if that's going to be the case, like in multiple states in the U.S., then and the NHL gets a piece of that, then not to say that it could be a problem, but it could be. And even though these players are making millions of dollars, you don't know if it can affect teams and affect the game. So it's something we're going to be on the lookout for.
I mean, I'll tell you the bigger problem. Again, we can go back to yesterday's Ravens game, like, that last second safety that changes the line like crazy. And you don't know that that's going to happen. And the players certainly don't care. And that to me is what gambling's all about. And that's why I don't do it, because those kinds of things are the most annoying things on earth when you think you've got something wrapped up and somebody last second loses, somebody last second wins. You didn't think it was going to happen, and all of a sudden it looked great, didn't look great, and then on the other side, wow, it's like a big surprise. You may not even thought you had a chance.
Well, why do you think I stopped when I was in my 20s, Russ? That kind of stuff drove me crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it happens a lot in football, especially now with the wacky rules, Joe.
I was to say, garbage time is like if I was a gambler, garbage time games, I would pull all my hair out. I would just be over it completely. It's bad enough of fantasy football, and like those are varying levels of of money involved in them. And,
yes.
But, fantasy, like whatever. But like doing parlays and money lines and crap like that, oh my God, no, I'd lose my mind. I would lose my mind every time. But that's the high. Like that's the whole point. Like winning money is the point, but it's also chasing that high of like living on the edge to a degree. And
I'm definitely not a compulsive gambler because when I win, I feel relieved, and when I lose, I feel sick. So that's not the usual Jones that you get.
No, but on the hockey end, it's weird. It's a little different because you don't see too many lopsided games or too many amazing comebacks where you could say, all right, that looks fishy. So I don't think they had that trouble.
I will say, though, I saw one of the goals scored from that game in Sweden where a defenseman, one of the defensemen was like on a break-in, decided to try to do a hip check in the middle of the ice and missed it by about 10, 15 feet and turned into a 2-on-1 that was an automatic goal. And I was like, well, I can see why people would wonder if this was if this game was on the fix, because holy geez, I can't say I've ever seen a defenseman miss a check that badly and fall poorly out of play, like in a professional league, like junior, peewee, high school. Like, okay, fine, want to be a hot shot, okay, but pro player missing that bad.
We do have a little NHL news here, and I do trust the source on this because I think this person gets a little bit of decent info. Adrian Dater says he's hearing that the NHL games will be played in every home building, no hub cities, and I think he's been in that city long enough where he probably has gotten some sort of word from the Avs.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's one of the stumbling blocks, and I do think that that's probably the way it's going to go, Joe, because at the end of the day, at least you're rewarding some of your workforce that you're going to have back in the building.
Yeah, there's part of that, although the Sabres fired all their people, so but it's also that I think the experience of all the teams that went to the hubs or that went to the bubbles was so bad that they were just like, nah. Like players were just like, we were very hard against that. So giving them the home, giving them the ability to be at home was way more outranked anything else. Which I think that might have been an issue with the owners, where they were just like, listen, let's just get these games in. We'll hub it up for a little while. We'll do it. But the players were just like, absolutely not. We're not going to eat these garbage meals, on the road and not have promises followed through with. And
play ping pong all day. I bet you the protocols for them being staying at home are going to be, it's probably going to be daily testing. They're going to tighten things up.
They'll have a wristband. Everybody will get a wristband.
It's not like guys can go out to bars. Like there's nothing to do. Like you just got to sit at home anyways.
Now, the one thing, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, in terms of us as press, I'm wondering what each NHL team is going to do. And if you think about it, there shouldn't be any sort of cutting back of press access. I mean, I know in terms of face-to-face access, that's gone by the wayside until everybody gets vaccinated. It's probably going to be Zoom calls. But in terms of like people in the building with no fans in the stands, Joe, like if you're at KeyBank Center, there's no reason why they can't put like tables in the 100 level for media members if they want to socially distance and have space in between people in the press box. There's no reason that they shouldn't let the same amount of people in the building to cover the games than they have done previously. And I think, and Russ has said this, the coverage of these games is even more important now because they want to keep the spotlight on these teams.
Yeah, and honestly, when I just think of KeyBank Center, put everybody in the suites. I know there was some concern expressed because the video coaches and the upstairs coaches are just like, well, they got to space everybody out, and they have to put them in the press box. And it's like, okay, fine. Just put all the media, the writers down on the 100 level or the suites. Give everybody their own suite. Everybody can be separated. Nobody's going to the games, so I don't see what the problem is there. Obviously, once they start letting people in the building, they got to put some other stuff out. But until that happens, to me, the answers are really easy. Every building's got suites. Columbus already basically does that as it is.
I do want to mention, though, I think I would like to see the NHL improve on what they did last year as far as in-game experience. And I'll give you an example. Like this is where like the NFL fails, and it's up to each team, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe I'll bring on Mike Ross and we'll chat about it from the Leafs perspective because I know Rossi really well. But as an example, like with the Jets, it's really odd if you're watching a game with no fans and the voice of the team is still like, and it's third down. Like, okay, look, we're not there. So we get when it's third down. We're not screaming in our living rooms to get that, stop to get the ball back.
Russ, punt. I will give you one that's more annoying, and Joe will know this. Now it's Bills Stadium. Every time the Bills are on defense and the team is at third down, they play this annoying train noise, like to rev up the defense. Now, when the crowd is there, they get the noise gets generated and everything, but there's nobody there, so they keep playing this train noise when it's 3rd and 25 or 3rd and 1. Right. It doesn't make any difference. It's so friggin' annoying.
Can we be smarter than that, Joe? Can't we?
Yeah, I've been very anti-train from going back from when it started.
Yes.
But you're right, though. Arenas are going to need, good luck to the game pres people for how they're going to do stuff, because I don't know how you try to recreate.
Like in Philly, Gritty's going to work twice as hard as he used to.
You're right. Gritty's going to live behind the team benches the entire games.
Yeah. He's going to be before Crosby will hit the bench, and he's going to hold the top of Crosby's stick.
Yeah, right. It's going to be like Harvey the Hound Part 2 all over the game.
Oh, when he got his tongue ripped out, right?
Yeah, Craig McTavish ripping his tongue.
He ripped the tongue out.
One last thing, Joe, and nobody can really complain because obviously the situation, has lent itself to this. There's going to be an all-Canadian division because of the border. I've heard from Sabre fan friends of mine that they're pissed off at the fact that the Sabres are going to be in the division with, Pittsburgh, Washington, Philly, the Rangers, the Islanders, that they have absolutely no hope of making the playoffs. And this is the year that they go out and spend, prorated $8 million on Taylor Hall, and nobody's going to be able to be in the building to see Taylor Hall in person. That the only thing they're going to see is him on TV. I mean, how much of a case do you think the Sabres have to be pissed off at the potential of them being in that division with those teams?
They don't have a reason to be happy about it. That's for sure. Their success against those teams in the past has not been very good. I mean, Pittsburgh's, aside from last season, Pittsburgh's run all over them. Philly destroyed them last year, both with and without Eichel in the lineup. The New York teams, they've always done terrible down in the tri-state area. They've done terrible down there. Boston, Boston, they always play well against, but they don't usually come out with a win. And Washington kills them. They can't stop Ovechkin. So it's a bad setup. It's a very bad setup for Buffalo. But you know what? No excuses. They've loaded up front. They can score goals ideally. The defense is a big question. The goaltending is a question. Figure it out. That's what it boils down to. Just figure it out. Get it done. No complaints. You lose your games against Montreal. They've always played Montreal well. They always play well against Toronto, whether it's a win or a loss. They always play well against them.
Yes.
So two final things.
And the rest of the division, Florida, they have tons of trouble with Florida. They always lose to Tampa. It's 6-0. They lose Ottawa. Okay, Ottawa kicked them around last year. They lose Detroit. Okay, well everybody beat Detroit last year. If you're upset because you're losing all the gimme wins,
right?
That's more of a damning statement about your own team.
So two other things. I just saw a picture. The New Jersey Devil tweeted it out, where there's a row with there's PK Subban, Lindsey Vonn, and then he is next to Lindsey Vonn, and it's just in the cutouts, and it made me giggle. This is where we're going to be in baseball.
No, you didn't see the extension of that because what he did was he took PK Subban's cardboard cutout, laid it down on the ground and sat on it, and then put his arm around Lindsey Vonn. And then Lindsey Vonn responded on Twitter and said, PK's not going to be too happy about that.
That's funny. And then the last one is, can the Leafs please stop with these older pictures with the reverse retro jerseys? I joked the other day when they had the John Tavares one and Gilles Villemure is sprawled out. I said, Villemure told me that puck went wide. So, like, why are you doing these pictures?
So the latest one, they have Mitch Marner in between like Ken Dryden and I think Guy Lapointe and something against the Canadians. It looks like about early.
He looks like he's going to get slashed by any one of three guys, if not all three.
Like early 70s, like 72, 73, somewhere around there. But the thing that's stupid about it is they have Marner in the reverse retro jersey, and then there's another leaf along the boards in the back wearing the actual jersey that they wore in the 70s. If you're going to switch one, then switch the other. But they didn't. I mean, okay.
Lazy photoshopping.
I'll give you an A for creativity. But honestly, if you were going to do Tavares, you should have put him in an I against the Islanders because that would have been a good troll move. And if you're going to put Marner, I don't know what you'd do. Maybe put it against Columbus because he was going to sign an offer sheet with them or something. I don't know. All I know is that, I don't understand why they're doing it. They're promoting these ugly jerseys. And by the way, Joe, I walked by a rack of the Sabres reverse retro jerseys at Dick's Sporting Goods, and nobody had bought a one. They're so friggin' ugly.
Did you arrive after the truck showed up, or was it? Was that just perfect timing?
It was perfect timing. I mean, I'm walking through, and there was actually some people in there, and it was a full rack. It was like Eichel jerseys, Ristolainen jerseys. Not one was missing.
Wow, Ristolainen jerseys.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are those.
You want to get them on deep discount later on.
Yeah, and I'm not sure you'd even who's going to be brave and get a haul. Who's going to be brave enough to do that?
I already know a few people that have gotten the standard jerseys and all. So, because they're like, it's one season, hey baby, let's ride it out.
Russ, all people who got Lindros Leafs jerseys.
Yeah, look, I remember when I saw the first Lindros Rangers jersey, and I thought, wow, this looks weird. Like, but did anybody get a Reggie Jackson Orioles jersey? Like, I don't know.
He was there for 2 months. Come on, somebody. I'll tell you right now, someone will get a Joe Thornton Leafs jersey. I'll tell you that right now. Somebody
probably already been a bunch bought. Are you kidding me?
That one, I could see that one because he's retiring after this. That's fine, but Taylor Hall is going to move on from this and go somewhere else, and you're going to have that 1 year jersey. Like, I don't know.
But I don't know if anybody's going to get a Zach Bogosian jersey, Joe. All right.
Zach's got a big family.
There you go.
Well, Joe, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks,
really
Joe.
Appreciate it. We'll have you on the show again, hopefully before the start of the season, which, like I said, knock on wood, January 13th. For Joe Yerdon, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just